Rumours have started to circulate that Daniel Ricciardo has had a seat fit for AlphaTauri at their Faenza base in Italy, or what relation this has to his role as Red Bull's test and reserve driver, given that he's also available to AlphaTauri, is unclear. There have also been reports that after Nyck de Vries' bad start to his rookie F1 season in the first 5 races, that Helmut Marko has now gone with the kick up the backside approach and told him that he needs to start showing progress in the next 3 races, which are all tracks that Nyck has had plenty of experience on as we head into the season's first triple header. Now, I will say right off the bat that the rumours of Ricciardo going for a seat fit at Faenza are by no means concrete. The race and other credible media outlets have reported on their website that the seat fit did actually happen, whilst over on ESPN, my good friend Nate Saunders, who recently appeared on the channel actually, has reported that according to his sources, the claims of a rumoured seat fit are untrue. Either way, this video really isn't about whether those rumours are true or not, because honestly to me when it comes to Red Bull, it doesn't really matter. In a way, even if they're not true, it could become a self-fulfilling prophecy because Red Bull more than any other team is more than capable of booting out an underperforming driver mid-season in favour of another driver who they might think can do a better job. It's no surprise that Helmut Marko has started to turn up the heat on Nyck de Vries because Miami was yet another disaster. Ironically, right before Miami, I actually made a video talking about de Vries and his early season struggles, and despite out-qualifying Yuki for the first time and getting into Q2, less than 24 hours later de Vries threw it all away by locking up and driving into the back of Lando Norris, which ruined his race before he even got into turn 1. This was also the first time that another driver came out and criticised de Vries, with Lando saying that he should probably try braking a bit earlier next time. It was a sarcastic line that I think highlights the growing frustration from not just the team and the higher-ups at Red Bull, but also potentially from his fellow drivers as well. In terms of talking about Nyck himself and his struggles so far, there's not really too much more that I have to say that I didn't say on my video about him last week. It doesn't matter who you are, the bottom line is that you need to deliver, and de Vries just hasn't so far in 2023. His qualifying pace does seem to be getting closer to Yuki's, but making the mistakes that he has so far just isn't something that you'd expect from an experienced driver like he is. The question is, if he continues to perform like he has been, would dropping him mid-season, if that really even is an option that's on the table, be the right thing to do? Because there is no guarantee that any driver that you put into the AlphaTauri right now will even do a better job. Let's not ignore that AlphaTauri have a terrible car, as in it's literally them or Williams fighting to not be last in the Constructors' Championship right now. Even though the performance of every midfield team has fluctuated so much, I mean, there's been weekends where McLaren looked terrible, there's weekends where Alfa Romeo looked nowhere, I still think that on average over the first 5 races, AlphaTauri have probably been the slowest so far. Even if you drop de Vries and put another driver into that car, you'd be putting in a driver with minimal preparation into an already bad situation where the weight of expectations is gonna be high to do better than the driver before, and that is not exactly a recipe for success. On the other hand, you could also just point to what de Vries himself did in the Williams last year in Monza, stepping into a bad situation massively underprepared and doing a better job than the already established driver in the other car. But there's a very big difference between stepping into a seat as a last-minute replacement with zero expectations for one race, with an already underperforming Latifi in the other car, and stepping into a full-time race seat replacing another driver in a bad car, with Yuki Tsunoda as your benchmark, who's not just driving better than he has before, but is making that car look probably better than it is. The risk versus reward of replacing de Vries mid-season, if it's even worth the reward, is something that's ultimately down to the team and Helmut Marko. Red Bull are more than capable of playing musical chairs with their drivers, and I guess this is one chair that we'll need to keep a very close eye on. So, what does all of this mean for Daniel Ricky Bobby Enchante Ricciardo? Well, I definitely think that listening to what he's been saying, he wants to return to the grid in 2024. This role as Red Bull's third driver, I always thought was a way for him to kind of step back into a winning organization and a team and an environment that he knows very well to help rebuild his reputation and also his confidence and motivation. When he first stepped back into the Red Bull simulator in December, it's been very well documented that it was pretty much a disaster. But over time, as he's done more and more sim work, Christian Horner came out in Australia and basically said that he needed to shake off what he described as the bad habits that he picked up whilst driving at McLaren. In his role as the third driver, that also includes him being at some of the races, which so far have been Australia and Miami. Now, those races were also picked out because of the media advantages as well. Ricciardo is a super popular guy in Australia for some reason, and Miami was another one of those races where even as a reserve driver, he got plenty of exposure. What I've noticed in the interviews that he's given in Australia and then Miami is that his tone and just the general feeling when you hear him speak is that he is getting hungrier and hungrier to return. He's making a point to say that he is staying in great shape, and as Red Bull's reserve, his duties, which include sim work, attending some of the races, doing a few promotional runs in older cars, also includes doing a Pirelli tyre test in the current generation Red Bull. And it is now confirmed that he will be driving a 2023 Red Bull RB19 at a Pirelli tyre test in Silverstone in July after the British Grand Prix. This is going to be a huge test for Ricciardo because as much as we won't be able to judge from the outside, make no mistake, Red Bull, who will have all of the data and all of the information, they'll be able to see and evaluate if his speed and quality is still there, at least in Red Bull machinery. There is a lot of dots that would need to be joined up, but if de Vries is still struggling after Silverstone, if Ricciardo impresses enough during that test, and is open enough to a mid-season stand-in at AlphaTauri, and then of course if Helmut Marko himself is open to making it happen, then things could get pretty interesting. I think a lot of it would rest, however, on the hunger and motivation of Ricciardo because last year he had options to stay on the grid if he wanted to and be in a better car than he might be if he does step into the AlphaTauri. Haas was on the table if the money situation could have been negotiated. If he really wanted to talk Alpine into it, maybe that could have been an option. But Ricciardo consciously chose to take a year out to refresh the batteries and find out if the hunger is still there. He also spoke about only wanting to return with a competitive team that motivates him and that he didn't want to just make up the numbers. But if there really is that desire to get back on the grid, then Ricciardo is going to have to realize and be humble about the fact that his stock since early 2021 has plummeted like Bitcoin. If he believes through his simulator work at Red Bull that in non-McLaren machinery that he can get back to driving more naturally and not so much consciously worrying about how to drive the car right, then maybe he will feel that finishing the season at AlphaTauri, even if that's not where he wants to be next season, might be the best way for him to put himself on the market for next season, so that the last memory people have of him in a car is not him struggling at McLaren. However, if that seat or opportunity mid-season did open up at AlphaTauri, is Ricciardo actually the right driver to be given that opportunity? Red Bull have got plenty of young drivers themselves who are probably even more hungry than Ricciardo is to get on the grid. I actually wanted to get your thoughts on this, and so over on my Twitter I asked exactly that. If Helmut Marko did drop Nyck de Vries, which driver would you put in that seat? I gave the options of Ricciardo, Liam Lawson, Ayumu Iwasa, or someone else. At time of recording, almost 14,000 people voted, and it was actually Liam Lawson, the young New Zealander currently racing in Super Formula in Japan, who got almost half of all of the votes. This poll was very interesting because I think a lot of people recognize that AlphaTauri is supposed to be a team for Red Bull young drivers, exactly like Ricciardo was over a decade ago, to at least get their chance. As much as Ricciardo is a fan favourite and I'm sure he himself wants the track time, there is a very valid argument that he's had his chance. And if AlphaTauri want to take a chance, then giving it to a younger driver who more than deserves his opportunity in Liam Lawson is the right way to go. In the end, it all depends on what happens with De Vries, where Ricciardo's head is at, what Helmut Marko thinks is the right thing to do, and if Lawson represents a longer term gain as an actual Red Bull Junior who would benefit the most out of being given this opportunity. What happens with this seat is going to be very interesting to watch regardless. But let me know if you think dropping De Vries, if he continues to struggle, would be the right way to go, and if it is, who's the right driver who should take his place?